All right, y'all. So I am feeling a little bit like George Lucas today because I am creating a trilogy of stimulus updates for you. The first episode of this trilogy, I released it this morning. I showed you what Donald Trump said yesterday when he was asked about a second round of stimulus checks. Then in the second episode of my stimulus trilogy today, I shared with you what Steven Mnuchin, Secretary of the Treasury, said when he was asked about more stimulus checks yesterday. And now, in this final episode of the trilogy, I will show you a clip of what Vice President Mike Pence said when he was asked a very pointed question on Fox Business about the next round of stimulus, and I think it is a good question, and it's an important question, and it's something that I have wondered about myself here on the channel. Okay, and Pence is an interesting guy. I don't think we've talked very much about him as it relates to stimulus, because as far as the White House is concerned, Trump and Mnuchin take more of a they have more of a public face, right, when it comes to stimulus and negotiating with Congress on these things. However, according to the Washington Post this morning, some people are not happy with Steven Mnuchin. Some Republicans in Congress are not happy with Steven Mnuchin because they think that he was a little too nice in negotiating with Pelosi regarding the CARES Act. That was the stimulus relief bill that instituted the first round of stimulus checks. Okay? And according to reports apparently heard by the Washington Post, some Republicans in Congress want Mike Pence to take more of a focused role in negotiating the next round of stimulus with Congress. Okay? These are just reports, just something I read in a Washington Post article. I don't have any primary sources for you on that. Okay? But that's what WAPO was reporting this morning. I mean, it'd be interesting if Pence became more front and center to this whole stimulus thing, right? But what I want to talk about right now is something that Pence said yesterday on Charles Payne's show yesterday on Fox Business. Okay, Charles asked Pence the exact same question that I have been wondering here on the channel over the past couple days. What's the question? Okay, well, first let's set the stage. Last Friday, Peter Navarro, last Friday evening, right? Kind of in an interview that not many people picked up on, right? But last Friday, Peter Navarro said in an interview, and Peter Navarro is Trump's basically head of trade and manufacturing, right? He's like an economic advisor to the president. Peter Navarro said that Trump wants another $2 trillion in the next coronavirus relief bill, okay? According to Washington Post this morning, some in the White House are apparently thinking that maybe Navarro spoke out of turn, right? But that's the story right now, right? Trump wants $2 trillion in the next stimulus bill. All right. Earlier this week, there were reports that Trump wants $1 trillion in infrastructure spending. Okay? Now, big question is that $1 trillion number we heard Trump wants for infrastructure spending, is that part of that $2 trillion that Peter Navarro talked about that Trump wants in the next coronavirus relief bill? Because if it is, that means half of that $2 trillion, in Trump's mind, would go to infrastructure. That leaves only a trillion, okay, to get everything else done, from state and local funding, payroll tax cuts, liability protection, maybe some reduced form of federally funded unemployment benefits, and yes, of course, stimulus checks. That's not a lot, right? So the pressing question is, right, is that $1 trillion infrastructure part of that $2 trillion, or is that something else? That is the exact question that Charles Payne asked Mike Pence yesterday on a show on Fox Business. Okay? And here's the clip.
Let's talk about the economic side of this recovery that goes hand in hand with the health side. A lot of debate now on what should be included, or if there should be another stimulus package out there. Apparently, the word is that the White House is looking at something in the $2 trillion range, but there's also reports of an infrastructure package at $1 trillion. Would those be together? Would the $1 trillion in infrastructure be part of the $2 trillion, or would that be a separate entity?
I think our expectation now, Charles, is that infrastructure will be part of a separate piece of legislation. There's roughly a $400 billion infrastructure bill that the president and our team have had conversations with about Capitol Hill. And the president's made it clear that as we're in discussions with the Congress about another phase of recovery, it's going to be focused on the American people, on making sure that families are able to get through this coronavirus pandemic. We're going to help small businesses. We're going to bring our economy through. But I'll be honest with you, one of the things the president's made very clear with leaders in Congress is we've got to have pro-growth policies in this next round. The president wants to see a payroll tax cut. That's going to put money in the pockets of working Americans. We're going to make permanent the relief that on the employer side that'll encourage investment and job creation and growth. So we're going to put families first and the American people first and make sure that they have the support they need. But we're going to also bring forward the kind of policies that'll catalyze the growth.
All right, so this is good news, right? Pence said that the infrastructure bill, okay, would be something separate than whatever Trump is seeking or the White House is seeking in the next coronavirus relief bill. Charles Payne brought up the $2 trillion figure. Pence did not contest it, okay? I'm not taking his silence as confirmation, but at least he didn't contest that, right? What else is very interesting about this is that Pence said the infrastructure bill the White House is currently negotiating with Congress is $400 billion, not the $1 trillion that we heard about earlier this week. What does that mean? Well, it could mean that the reports, right, we heard about Trump wanting $1 trillion for infrastructure were incorrect. Or it could mean that, yeah, the White House maybe wanted $1 trillion, but Congress kind of negotiated him down to $400 billion. I don't know. We don't really know what happened there. But now the number for infrastructure is apparently $400 billion. Regardless, that will be separate from the next coronavirus relief bill, at least according to Vice President Pence. And this $400 billion number, down from $1 trillion to $400 billion, maybe that's why Congress, maybe that's why they like Pence, right? Because maybe they see him as more of a fiscal hawk when it comes to the next round of stimulus, someone who will be more willing to be a little more confrontational with Pelosi and the Democrats with the money they want to spend. But one thing very positive that Pence said about the next round of stimulus is that it will be focused on the American people, okay? I know there's a lot of speculation. Okay, well, the White House, what they want out of the next stimulus, they just want to help businesses, right? But in Pence's response, as you've heard, he talked about the people, the families, right? He said that the next round of stimulus will be focusing on the American people. He said that they're discussing with Congress, it will be focused on the people, making sure that families are able to get through the pandemic, to put families first, to put American people first. He did not specifically mention stimulus checks, okay? He did mention the payroll tax cut, which would give workers a bit of a boost on what they take home from their job every couple weeks. But nevertheless, I find it encouraging that Pence went out of his way to not just mention business, okay? But he went out of his way to mention in particular and put the focus on American people and families. Is that all talk? I don't know. We're going to have to see what comes of this. I mean, this is exciting to me, right? We're not going to really have any firm answers probably for at least another month on what's going to be in that Republican bill, but I like kind of this intrigue, right? Kind of in the build up to that on, Pence and Trump and Mnuchin and all these cats, right? All right, so that ends my stimulus trilogy for the day. There's some other stimulus news, right? Kind of more everyday stuff. The jobless claims came out again this morning, as I always do on Thursday. There's that supposed drama, I guess, within the White House about whether or not Peter Navarro spoke out of turn and dropping that $2 trillion figure. But I think I'll save these more minor issues for either a supplemental video later today, or perhaps just save them for my stimulus update tomorrow morning. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I did create a video on what Trump said this morning when he was asked about a second round of stimulus checks. You can check that out right up here. I also made a second video this morning on what Mnuchin said yesterday when he was asked about second round of stimulus checks. You can check that out right down here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.